some of these customers don't have even product market fit. But let's say when you do have a product market fit, then you have to figure out then what's called channel fit, right? So is email or LinkedIn or cold calling, whatever the channel, is it the good fit channel with the product that you have, right? So there's also those problems that customers have, and customers are not really sure. So they are experimenting, they're trying to figure out what it works for them, etc. So that's one of the reasons why churn is always a thing in this SMB sort of sales technology category.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where it doesn't matter if you're a morning person or a night owl. Success isn't about when you work. It's about making sure what you build is worth waking up for. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Is your sales strategy actually built for scale, or are you just running faster on a treadmill that really isn't moving anywhere? Scaling a company isn't just about selling more. It's about selling smarter. If you're bringing in new customers but losing just as many on the back end, then you're not growing. You're just replacing lost revenue, and that kind of sucks. If you haven't nailed product market fit and market product fit, channel fit, you're probably throwing money at marketing efforts that aren't really delivering sustainable growth. Here's the reality. Growth isn't just about acquiring new customers. It's also about keeping them, expanding their lifetime value, and ensuring that they get enough value to stick around like forever. Yeah, that's where the magic of vertical and horizontal expansion comes in. If you're not strategically upselling, cross-selling, or optimizing your pricing structure, you're leaving serious revenue on the table. In this episode, we're breaking down what it really takes to scale sales in today's market. We'll talk about finding the right acquisition channels, minimizing churn, and leveraging AI in a way that enhances, not replaces, the human touch in sales. Plus, we'll dive into how building a seamless product ecosystem can create long-term customer loyalty instead of confusion. If you're tired of sales strategies that feel like a never-ending cycle of wins and losses, and you want a playbook for sustainable growth, then this episode is packed with insights that you won't want to miss. Let's do it. Our expert guest last week was Marcus Hamaker, CEO of Boost USA and host of the Pursuit of Value podcast. He shared how small businesses can scale sustainably while reducing stress. And man, that is a good one. He explored the importance of emotional intelligence, financial clarity, and structuring organizations for long-term success, not just short-term value. And our founder last Tuesday was Lucas Lovell, VP of Product at Paddle. And he unpacked how SaaS companies can leverage payments infrastructure as a growth strategy. Really cool stuff. From sales tax compliance to localization and conversion optimization, Lucas shared essential insights for scaling SaaS globally. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Frank Sondors, founder of SalesForge. He is redefining B2B sales using big data to optimize pipelines and drive efficiency through AI. From top performing reps to scaling large sales teams, Frank has seen it all. And in just 1 year, he's built a multi-million-dollar business by helping companies crush their pipeline goals. He's doing it with leaner, smarter strategies, and AI is one of them. Today, he's here to share how data-driven sales can unlock massive growth without ballooning your headcount. Welcome, Frank Sondors. Hey, Frank, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, how's it going?
What inspired you to start SalesForge, and how did you scale it to multi-million-dollar business in just a year?
I've been in sales for over a decade. I really started my career back at Google, selling ads to a bunch of advertisers out there and making sure they spend more money with Google. So this was my sort of the first sort of stepping stone in the world of digital software, ad tech, and stuff like that. And then from then on, I worked for a bunch of SaaS companies in machine learning. So that's the old school AI, even though machine learning exists since 1950s or something. And then in my last gig, I had a sales team of about 50, scaling a company. And it was a sales-led company. So essentially the main lever to target a table was just hiring more reps, because typically the conversion rate doesn't really change much. And then you would sit down with your CFO in January and you would calculate okay, how many heads do we need to hit our target? And then
Right.
you go crazy, and it was growth at all costs. So that's exactly what we did. Thousands of other companies. But naturally, it wasn't very efficient, right? From a CAC standpoint, so cost of customer acquisition. And I thought to myself, why do we need all those individuals in the business? There isn't a sort of a better way to do that? Why wouldn't we be able to scale, but with the least possible headcount? And then I was looking at the legacy software. I'm not going to name what's the legacy software, but a lot of people will know in the audience. But there's a lot of legacy tech essentially in the space, and that legacy tech is built around bigger teams. More people means more revenue. So most companies used to do the same sort of playbook as they did decades and decades ago.
Sure.
So then the software vendors in the sales execution space, what they've started to do is building the product around bigger teams, so all the workflows and many other things. But then naturally with all the LLMs and AI agents and everything, a lot of companies these days are significantly leaner and meaner. But ultimately, back sort of 20 plus months ago, so not even 2 years ago, we decided to build Salesforce really with a vision to help companies to attain their pipeline targets, but with the least headcount possible, and doing so with the highest probability using big data, similar to how things are done in the world of ad tech, etc. So it really came from my own sort of frustration running a large sales team as a VP sales, and then thinking to myself, wait a minute, there must be a better way of doing these things. Especially, I always say, because I used to hire hundreds of salespeople in my life, and then I also fired hundreds of salespeople in my life. But I always say, for every 10 salespeople that you hire, one is natural, really that's the max. Then 2 to 3 people can be trained up to be somewhat good as the person that's really natural in sales. And then 60% is typically dead wood. That means they shouldn't be sales. They somehow land in sales, but they're not really good at their jobs for different various reasons. I'm not going to go into that. But ultimately, these employees are not accretive to your organization, and they're costing you more than they're actually generating for you in terms of the revenue. It's just that you couldn't do much about this because you needed all these extra heads to hit your pipeline targets, even though they were not really good in terms of CAC efficiency. So now what we're trying to do is ultimately get rid of the 60% and increase the output of the 40%. And there's a lot of things that you need to do to achieve that. And it's quite a long journey that we need to go on. But so far, it's going pretty well. We are the fastest growing software in our category in the first 12 months. Let's see how we're going to end up in the second year. Second year we're not done yet. And that means in terms of customer count, revenue, product. So we actually have more than one product. We actually don't just have one product or software, which is what typically companies have. We already have 4 softwares in total, and we're just about to ship the 5th software also next month, focusing on the data needs of our customers. So yeah, a lot of things are happening.
That is a lot. And that the whole idea is really taking the humans and, like you said, removing that 60% that are not producing and making the rest of them, the other 40%, extremely efficient and able to do the work of 100% through using AI agents and that human AI combination to really build out the pipeline and scale outreach. They get that right?
Yeah. It's essentially the blend of the two. So you're taking the best of both worlds, right? So you're taking really creme de la creme reps that are really good at their jobs, and you give them the right AI capabilities with them. That's how you have to think about this, right? So give them the best LLMs, the best computations and everything, and automations and stuff like that, to make them produce more, rather than hiring a bunch more individuals into your organizations that that you may be firing them down the line later this year. Like essentially, there's that huge dilemma that a lot of heads of sales have. Also, they're hiring a lot of people, then they're firing a lot of people. It's not a very efficient. It's a bit like SaaS. You acquire and then they churn, and it's a nightmare. You have to train reps, you need to ram them, etc. So there's all of these problems that naturally come with humans. Plus, naturally, if you look at the salaries in tech sales, they're going also through the roof. But ultimately, it stems from the problem that if you look at macro level data, what macro level data states, not just in software, but just generally around the world, that to acquire net new dollars for your organization, it's becoming more and more expensive to acquire these dollars. So that's ultimately what we're going after. And so there's different ways how you can tackle this sort of CAC inefficiency, but we're going after labor and then trying to figure out in sales, what do we have these biggest inefficiencies when it comes to sales labor? And then I look at the 60%, and I'm trying to figure out how can I help companies to reduce that headcount by anywhere between 20 to 60%. That's really the vision that we have. And yeah, we're focusing more on the top of the funnel reps. So if you're doing a lot of the top of the funnel activities, that's where we come in. So we're essentially trying to build that demand that for your business, that pipeline that you're looking for, and just do that super efficiently. So we started with the first initial channel, so that being email and outbound only. We're just about to also roll out LinkedIn as our secondary channel, and then we'll finish off with VoIP later this year. So really giving these three main channels to talk to your customers. And then the modus operandi, if you want to use reps, what we call the human path, or if you want to use the agent path, it's up to you. Like you can do one or the other or both. Like we really believe that the best output will be if you're actually going to use both paths within the software. And you will do that naturally with the lowest cost per unit. So the unit typically, let's say, is meeting attended. That will be typically the unit that we'll look at, or how we look at things internally. And yeah, so far it's going pretty well. And because if you also look at the space, let's say the Bay Area companies, a lot of them are just building a bunch of agents right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're just fully discounting humans. And I don't think that's really the right path to go, because I think a lot of smart people, if you sit down with them, you will realize that there's no way to really fully replace humans. But you can actually very nicely augment and essentially blend these AI agent capabilities with humans. So essentially, a lot of Bay Area companies are building a bunch of AI agents that they're discounting humans. And what happens to a lot of leaders out there essentially is they're using essentially one piece of tech, which is designed for reps. And then there's another piece of tech, which is just AI agents. And I don't believe myself that if you're a very smart sales leader, you're going to be using these two different softwares that are essentially building pipeline for you. So this is why we're blending the human component and the agent component in one place. And it's working well so far. I have right now 3 reps as a team. They're doing the typical thing. And then I also have agents running. And I see that for myself because we're dogfooding actually our own software and our own agents, actually the output, which is also explains why we're growing that fast. But also the other thing I would mention why, even though we're going to this whole crazy new world of AI and agentic and stuff like that, a lot of people forget that you can't really use AI agents for many different things. For example, an AI agent can't do social selling for your LinkedIn, can't jump on a podcast with somebody like you, can't pick up the phone and do cold calling. It's illegal in the US, for example, to be using agentic capabilities to do cold calling. So all of these essentially things are hindering companies to be using these AI agents. And that's ultimately where the humans come in, right? That's a sweet spot. And then when it comes to crafting emails or replying quickly back to prospects, booking meetings, all that stuff, that is more the agentic sort of part. And this is why blending these two worlds is really powerful. Yeah, super excited, but also at the same time, I just want to warn anybody out there that, yeah, there's a lot of all these companies on the agentic front, but any day, sort of Trump may decide that, hey, listen, guys, we don't want these agents anymore, right? He'll shut them all down, right? So this is why it's also important not to forget that this may happen, because there's a lot of regulation still on the agentic front that we haven't seen yet in the US, Europe, etc., you name it. And it's still coming, right? And it will come definitely very fast if the AI agent will start doing some weird stuff.
Right.
But we're not seeing that yet. So I think I'm personally very hopeful that we will get to this sort of world, not just in sales, but also in finance, maybe in even software engineering, to the world where we're going to see more and more this sort of blend to maximize really the outcomes in the organization. So
Yeah. I think it's the first use case is probably more inbound than outbound. Like you said, cold calling, it's not quite there yet. There's some really good use cases and some that are not there yet. And you're right. At some point, this probably will be regulated at some level. It already is to some degree with just TCPA
yeah.
regulation, but that is pretty far behind technology. And
Yeah.
that seems to happen a lot in the regulatory environment as the technology or the law from 20, 30, 40 years ago, we're trying to apply to new technology today and try and navigate that. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, but I'm saying while the regulation is still not there, you should definitely capitalize on the opportunity of using the agentic abilities to the max, because
Sure.
that may go away at some point in the future. But I'm still hopeful, right? Because all countries, whether that's US, China, with DeepSeek, etc., they're all looking at productivity levels within their own countries. And one of the ways how you can massively increase the productivity is using AI agents, right? So I think it will be a very stupid thing if somebody will decide to ban them. But I just want to make sure I caution anybody so not to really make your bets on the AI agents fully removing humans. Definitely, they have to be still. They have a place. And the one thing that definitely can't be replaced, in my opinion, which is the hardest part, is when you actually jump on the call with a human, right? So this is where there's definitely a place for humans. So account execs, for example, are not going away, in my opinion, unless only one thing would happen, which is So if you would know in advance that if you're going to speak to an AI agent on the call, and you'll get, let's say, 20% off from the rate card. That is the only scenario that I can imagine where a real human won't speak to a rep and will speak to an AI agent, because you're getting that discount from the get-go. Also, a lot of people don't want to speak to sales reps, so that may be another reason. But yeah, the reason why I'm saying 20% is because typically sales costs about 20% for the organization. So this is why typically 20% is totally fine, because you can eliminate that account exec from the equation. I'll let them go through, say, a self-service motion, because you can build an agent that will jump on a call and answer a bunch of questions and will show you the demo and whatever of the product, the service, etc. And then we'll close you. We'll send you a proposal and everything will be fully automated. That is possible. I could build that, but it's just hard to imagine that a real human today that will do that, because 99% of companies have still not used an agent to date. So if you think about it, it's a bit like the internet moment, right? People are waking up, and there's all these Bay Area companies building these agents. And being there last year, I flew in September for a whole month. Every place I go to, they all speak about the AI agents for this, AI agent infrastructure, etc. So it's all cool, and yes, they're definitely coming. But still, you have to realize that 99% of companies have never used an AI agent. There's still billions of people out there that have not even used ChatGPT. So it will take some time. But yeah, it's exciting. A lot of people can massively increase their CAC efficiencies by introducing something like this. And it's not just in sales, but it's also in marketing and a bunch of other areas, right? Which is why we're going to see this quite interesting shift of this year and also next year, I believe. Companies becoming a lot leaner and meaner. And I think what investors are excited about all around the world is suddenly you have these sort of type of companies that can grow massively in revenue, but keep the headcount really flat. These are the most exciting, actually, companies that VCs are eyeing out for. And that's because they're just automating a bunch of things. One of the things, for example, that we do internally, so part of them using our agents, which is something that I would call like off-the-shelf solution agents. We also build, that's called custom agents. But as ultimately we use automation tools. There are tools like make.com or N8N. So we use N8N, for example, internally. We're trying to automate as much as we can, so it feels like a machine, right? If something's broken, you'll get a ping, this will happen, that will happen. So you can build a bunch of these sort of custom flows. You can also hook up an agent. You can use OpenAI API and this and that to really automate and maximize the efficiencies within your business and kind of stop doing any sort of repetitive work. So that's another kind of wave that I'm seeing. So the smartest companies, when they're scaling in terms of the headcount, they are thinking, wait a minute, we have way too many people doing kind of repetitive items. Couldn't we use something like N8N? Couldn't we use like some AI agent that could hook up to the N8N and which is going to automate these different activities? It could be like simple things like reminders, invoices, you name it, something to ensure that you're keeping it lean and mean, and you're reducing that pressure on hiring a bunch of people in different areas, whether that's operations, finance, etc. So yeah.
So good. When you talk about products, you said you have 4 now. What are they? What do they do? And then, why 4 products versus 1?
Good question. So if somebody's familiar with Jason Lemkin is like the godfather from the world of SaaS. He runs a conference called SaaSter. Jason always says that the best companies that he gets the most excited about are the ones that do what's called multi-product. So they have multiple products that they sell to the same customers, so solving different pains, and you're selling that also to the same buyer, right? So essentially, it's like a compound model. And we decided to do exactly that. So there's a lot of cool companies that do that in the US. So for example, Rippling. So you can just search in Google Rippling, software compound model. You can just read about it. But ultimately, it's about solving multiple pains within the ecosystem, or within the space rather. And the space, let's say Rippling is in HR and finance space, right? So solving all the problems that companies have in that space, and just offering different products. And it's also similar to HubSpot and Salesforce, etc. So we decided to do exactly that and ship like super aggressively. So in less than 2 years, yes, we shipped 4 products, really solving these different pains. So we have the core product, which is Salesforce. So that's like the mothership, right? It's a flagship product. And then around the flagship product, we're building these other products. So we currently have 2 infrastructure products. So these infrastructure products is something that you need in order to improve your deliverability, because you're diluting, essentially you're sending across multiple what's called secondary domains. And we do that super easy in 5 minutes. And then another product we have is what's called a deliverability enhancement sort of product. So you can essentially improve your email infrastructure reputation, whether using our infrastructure, Google, Microsoft, you name it. That's something you can do. And then the 5th product that we're just about to launch in a few weeks' time is a data product. So it's a bit like ChatGPT plus a bunch of databases. You can go in there, search for your leads against your ICP. Yeah, really cool. So essentially, this is what we do, where we looking at what are the other sort of pains that our ICP has, and should we build that next product? Because essentially we're looking to become like Microsoft suite of apps, like the Apple essentially, where it feels like this sort of integrated experience that you have, and that ease of use because everything integrates natively and stuff like that. Because currently, folks are having what I would describe like the Android experience, and the Android experience is ultimately where it's very fragmented, right? There's like hundreds of companies. And then what you end up doing as a sales leader, you end up buying like these 10 tools from 10 different vendors, 10 different invoices, 10 different support teams. And then you're stitching that together. Then you need to hire a sales ops manager to manage all of that, the data flows and everything. It's like super inefficient. And to confirm that, you can read some data by Salesforce. They've done a research study maybe a couple of years ago or so, which states that one of the biggest pains, like top 5 or top 3 pains essentially, that a lot of sales orgs have is the fragmentation. They really are looking to consolidate their stack. And that you can do that in a couple of ways, really. One is, hey, you can build this sort of super app and you can just cram a lot of features and you can consolidate. But my take is because a lot of sales reps are not very tech savvy. If you're going to cram too many features, you're going to become like Salesforce, right? Where there's a lot of stuff in it, but you maybe are using only 20%. So we decided, hey, how about we build sort of modular Apple or Microsoft where this pain, this product, that pain, that product. And you can stitch together a bit like Lego on top of each other. You only buy what you need. We don't charge per seat. We charge for the actual consumption of that software. And then we mark it up, right? It's a very typical sort of consumption-based pricing. And it works really well for the sales leader and for the CFO organization because they can really align the consumption of the software versus the value that you're getting. The value they're getting in our case is essentially more pipeline, right? Essentially, the more pipeline they generate, we expect them to charge them more for that. And that's why in our case, consumption also works pretty well as a model versus using seat-based pricing. Also considering the fact that we are looking to help you reduce the necessity to hire more reps, right? So it would be also a bit stupid if we would price it per seat. So yeah, we currently have, as I said, so 5 by next month, we're going to have 5, but we are looking to ship another 5 in the next 2 years. So a total of about 10 what we call forges, that forge ecosystem. You come to us, one invoice, one support team, one team, and then we are provisioning these different multiple softwares to solve these multiple sort of different pains.
What's been the greatest challenge in building multiple products and bringing them to market like that, especially in such a short time?
Good question. So I would say product engineering is probably the main one, right? So if you're shipping like super fast and it has to be a good product. It's not just about shipping a product and nobody's using it. But yeah, it's about shipping a good product fast. That's like the biggest challenge. And personally, I have never worked in the product and engineering led org. I've always worked in a sales led organization where majority of the company are sales people running around selling a product, etc. But in this business, what really drives the growth is a really good product. And it's not just one product, but it's multiple products that talk to each other. And so that is the biggest challenge. And that means there's quite a lot of pressure on our CTO and CPO to make sure that they're building that great product. And then I provide that domain expertise from the field, having been in the field for about 10 years, showcasing exactly how things were back in the days, what were the pains that I had, etc. And then what does the software has to look like, and where do we have to be in 5 years' time, and how does the ecosystem has to look like. So all of those things, dumping my knowledge onto the product engineering team, that's quite tough because it sits in my head how it has to look like as a former sales leader. Sure. Yeah, that is definitely a challenge. And then the other thing, my personal sort of mission is to replace myself. So I used to build pipeline all my life, used to do prospecting, etc. So our AI agent is actually called Agent Frank, so named after me. I'm really looking to replace myself so that I can spin up an agent and it will do everything autonomously from the point of, hey, setting up the ICP, sourcing the leads, crafting unique emails. So the prospect replies back, then we reply back to the prospect, and then actually booking a meeting autonomously. So all of that can be fully automated. And that's exactly the exciting part about being in this business and automating myself out of the business. So yeah.
I like that. Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform. So, it was in building the company, what are some KPIs or metrics that you look at? It could be from a business perspective or sales, and maybe some underrated metrics that other SaaS leaders should look at to understand the true health of their business and also their sales pipeline.
Good question. So naturally, if you're VC backed, so we are VC backed, even though we did have a choice to be bootstrapped. So the typical stuff that VCs are looking at is naturally growth. At what is the growth rate, and you should be growing at least sort of 10% on a monthly basis. And then naturally, NRR matters a lot. So your net revenue retention or net dollar retention, essentially making sure that you're not churning a lot of these customers. And actually, expansion matters a lot. Are you able to expand, land and expand? Actually, that's something that we do really well with the software compound model that I mentioned. But the underrated metrics, so I believe from the very early on, is something that you should be really good at, especially let's say when you are a software vendor, is really providing really great support for your customers. It's the most underrated thing in the world of software. Doesn't matter, or even just kind of service. Providing great service is really hard. And so one of the ways how you measure great service is, for example, looking at SLAs. So are you actually responding to your customers, let's say on chat? So we do man the chat with real people. And are we responding to those customers of ours within the 2-minute SLA? Then actually CSAT matters a lot. Are customers satisfied with the service that we provide? And then I additionally also send a few emails to a few of my customers in an automated fashion using N8N to ask how they, for example, felt about the experience with us after having a demo, for example. Like it works like super, super magically, where literally an email from a CEO comes out and says, hey, I've seen that you had a demo with us in the last few days. How was your experience with the rep? Is there anything that we could have done better? And it works like magic. So
That's
being
brilliant.
always top of mind with customers, providing that great service is one of the ways how you can stand out. Especially it's super important when you have a lot of competitors. And some of your competitors may not be really great on the, let's call it the support front, because it's not just about a great software. It's also about the team that's behind the software, right? Because at the end of the day, you're doing business with me, and I want you to do business not just with Salesforge as a business, but I want you to do business with Frank. And does Frank respond really fast? What's my experience with Frank? Is Frank knowledgeable? Does Frank have a domain expertise? Because a lot of companies out there, for example, in our space, they do build, let's say, a sales software, let's say in this pipeline building space. But the founders, for example, have never been in sales. And I'm a bit flabbergasted around the fact that these people raise a lot of money in the Bay Area and they have not done sales for a long time at all. If I would be buying software, I do buy software from good people that have been in the space, understand the space really well, and I have putting my faith and trust in those individuals being a really great software. Now, when it comes to maybe other metrics like pipeline is very important for us, right? Having fat pipeline is very important, right? And we do look naturally on a daily basis, pretty much how many sort of open opportunities we have. It's typical stuff. We naturally see our conversion rates across inbound funnel, outbound funnel. We also have another funnel, which is what we call partner sales. So we have a huge also reseller motion as well that we're kicking off. And so we look at that funnel separately. But yeah, these are the three funnels. We look at how we generate pipeline across these three funnels. We have a clear owner in each of the funnels. So for inbound, that's head of growth, fully owning the revenue there. Then we have on outbound, our sales team is owning outbound. And then we have a head of partnerships owning everything that has to do with partner sales. And yeah, so these are the three funnels how we're looking at. And of course, we need to grow. But it's not just about growing from having one single software product, but also figuring out, okay, we operate what we call a land and expand strategy. So our strategy is really to make sure that we're just selling this one subscription, this one product to the customer. And then after a few days, months, etc., we may sell a second product and a third product and a fourth product, right? This is how you land and expand. And so the expansion in terms of revenue can come by customer buying more of your usage within the existing product or buying these other products, right, that we have from our ecosystem. And so we look at also naturally at expansion metrics as well heavily. So for example, how many of our customers buy more than one subscription? Very important KPI. And then the other one is like how many subscriptions per customer do we have on average? So it has to be right now, maybe it's 1 point something, then we were trying to get to 2 point something, etc. So because ultimately the reason how we're going to get big, quoting back Jason Lemkin, is really for any major VC to be really excited about your business, is you need to figure out how to sell these multiple products to the same customer, especially in this category, which is like super, super crowded. Actually, it's one of the worst categories to build a software, something to do with email automations, AI agents, as well, etc. Because AI agent space is already like super crowded.
Right.
There's already AI agent maps, etc. But really, to get to $100 million in ARR, one of the main things that has to happen is selling multiple products to the same customer. It's a similar thing that HubSpot does, Salesforce does, and a bunch of other companies in order to get to that milestone, right? So this is why we are doubling down on our engineering and product team. We are trying to figure out how do we ship good product, how do we have good shipping velocity, and what is the next product that we should build. So naturally, we ask customers on chat. There's a feature request board using our domain expertise, just generally in space, trying to predict what are the things people that may want to buy in the future. So yeah, a lot goes into product strategy and kind of making sure it's successful. And once you have a good product or good multiple products, people come to you. And the good thing about this space, which you will agree, Jeff, is that there's a good word of mouth in the space, right? So if you enjoy the experience with the software vendor and it's a good software, it's delivering value to your pipeline, then you're gonna go and you're gonna tell your friends about it, right? Whether that's WhatsApp group or whatever. So there's a lot of that happens in this space. So if you know that word of mouth is one of the top 3 channels in your software category, then you have to build a really good product because people talk to each other, and the best product in this category will win, right? So this is why it's super important to lead with product engineering, led sort of strategy, trying to build really a kick-ass product and a product also naturally that's really hard to replicate.
Yeah, that makes sense. In a space that is crowded like that, it seems like it's pretty easy to try one thing and try another, and that probably happens a lot. And churn can become an issue, especially in an
Yes.
SMB world. What are some strategies that you found most effective for reducing churn?
Good question. So in this category, so we're also in part of this category, the churn is on average about 10% on a monthly basis. It's
Wow.
quite a huge churn, but that's just across the board. Most of the players in the SMB space, a lot of companies, small companies or solopreneurs, they go out of business or they try emailing for a bit or they try the agent for a bit and it doesn't work and they churn. It's a bit like Google Ads, right? So if you put some money
Yeah.
into Google Ads, you try and see if it works. If it doesn't, that's it, you churn. So Google also has a huge churn essentially because Google Ads doesn't work for everybody, right? And CPCs are like super expensive. So this is how you can compare these two things. Generally, if you're using a platform to acquire customers, it has to work because if it doesn't work, it's money down the drain ultimately, right? So this is why your customers will churn. And there's also a thing that you have to think about. So even though you have a product market fit, actually some of these customers don't have even product market fit. But let's say when you do have a product market fit, then you have to figure out then what's called channel fit, right? Is email or LinkedIn or whatever the channel, is it the good fit channel with the product that you have? So there's also those problems that customers have, and customers are not really sure. So they are experimenting, they're trying to figure out what it works for them, etc. So that's one of the reasons why churn is always a thing in this SMB sort of sales technology category. And then the question becomes like, what is it that you can do? So there's definitely some places where you can improve the product, right? Maybe disqualify customers, but ultimately there's not much you can do. And all the competitors that we have, they all have similar kind of churn metrics. Now, the way you can improve the stickiness or NRR generally, right? Okay, so you understand that on a monthly basis, this many customers and this much revenue will be churning. So in order to grow, right? So you need to then acquire a lot more aggressively customers. So that's exactly what we do. We acquire customers more aggressively than we churn through. And the other kind of natural lever that helps us because of NRR perspective is making sure that the existing customers that really love the product they actually buy more of the product, so the same product. So that's the vertical expansion, and then also horizontal expansion, right? So trying to figure out, okay, if the customer buys just this subscription, what needs to happen for them to buy subscription 2, 3, etc. So do we apply the customer success team, let's say for top 100 accounts? Or do we figure out one-to-many sort of approach from automation workflows, sending an email maybe, teasing them, or, for example, informing them via newsletter? There's essentially multiple different ways how you can orchestrate that, including in the app, always teasing the customer to check out that other product. And this is how you can improve the expansion part. But essentially, there are businesses like us where there's not much you can do about the churn problem. Now, VCs hate the churn for sure, SMB space, they hate it, which is why a lot of VCs invest in the enterprise space where it's more sticky. But the problem with the sort of mid-market enterprise is that you need to build a product which is geared towards mid-market enterprise. For example, in our case, that means we have to ship these other channels. For example, we have to roll out LinkedIn, we have to roll out Void, because in mid-market enterprise, the way that sales teams talk to the customers, including AI agents, they want to engage via LinkedIn, they want to engage via Void. So you have to ship that. And so that means we have to make that product better. Now, it's not just about shipping Void, but it's shipping about cold calling, ultimately solution that is really good in the market. You can't just ship a dialer and then expect that things will go well, right? If your connect rate is really low, or you're just not seeing results from your cold calling activity, you will also churn. Yeah, and the thing, I think the challenge is, because we build a lot, right? We can't build the best in class product. So you can't build a point solution and like build really the best product. But what we can do is build 80% of a good product that the best software has in the space. And that is enough for majority of the customers, for them to say, okay, I like this sort of consolidated experience, I want to go ahead with you. The way the customers become more sticky ultimately is because they buy multiple products, and they like that, the fact that, like I mentioned, there's a one support team, one invoice. It feels all the data flows like flow nicely, etc. And you don't have to use these different sort of point solutions. So that's also how you can improve the stickiness. And then, yeah, as I said, really great support team, right? Making sure your support doesn't suck. It's hard to do, especially when you have a lot of customers like we do. And so one of the things that you can make sure you're doing, so for example, let's say you have a customer base in Europe and the US. You have to staff the hours accordingly. So that means our support team works 18 hours a day, Monday to Friday. Now, the next question becomes, are your customers active during the weekend? If the answer is yes, you also have to staff weekends. So this is what we do as well. So we also allocate another 9 hours on Saturday and Sunday, making sure we are answering also your questions during the weekend. But you have to be present during the times that your customers are active, because if they're not able to have this sort of real-time communication back and forth, then they will get frustrated. And yes, the switchover cost is very low, and they will go to your competitor. So doing a good job at all times and following the metrics like SLA, etc., is super important in our organization.
Is that something you're using AI for as well? Is covering those extra hours, or is there a potential of expanding that to even 24/7 and having the AI take over your first level support?
Good question. So we only use AI outside of the working hours. Now, the dilemma with AI is AI is only as good as the knowledge base behind it, because ultimately using the knowledge base to answer the questions. We also have a bunch of bugs, or every software has bugs, right? And AI can't solve the bug for the customer. And so if a customer says, hey, I have a bug with your software, and then you're going to use AI agent to try and figure out the bug, it's not going to work out. And the customer will get frustrated, which is why we don't use AI as a first line of defense at all. Because if you still have a healthy amount of, let's say, bugs, or essentially, it's not just bugs, but essentially anything that AI can't answer, it's really a bad decision to apply AI on top of these tickets, because the customers, let's say there is a bug. So from my perspective, I have to talk to the AI agent first, and then I talk to the human. That sounds to me very inefficient. So always put yourself in the shoes of the customer. And the way you can do that, so we use, for example, in our case, for chat support, we use a solution called Gleep. Gleep is fantastic. It's like a alternative to Intercom, but super, super cheap. So super, super happy with it. But one of the main reasons why I went with Gleep is because Gleep offers you the ability to have unlimited seats within the software, which means I can literally invite everybody in the company, including engineers, to get them closer to the customers. So it's super important that you're doing things like that. An engineer could potentially jump in and quickly solve that problem, or can really understand the conversation and the frustration. The head of product can do that, etc. But when we use Intercom, for example, again, seat-based pricing, every license was costing us like $100, and it's something that where you don't want to invite the individuals, and it creates a lot of friction in the organization. So that's also an example of where it makes sense that you offer these sort of unlimited seats, because ultimately a company will be a lot more successful with your product. So yeah, that's an example there. But then the other way how you can also improve support is, let's say for your top 100 customers or priority customers, whatever you want to call them, you can push them into your Slack. So if you're using Slack, when we know there's going to be a top 100 customer, we will typically say, hey, let's create a mutual Slack channel, let's work together, etc. I still see a lot of companies that don't do this. They freak out actually about the idea of inviting customers in their own internal Slack. Especially when you put into that Slack engineers, and then you potentially ping an engineer. Engineers freak out. But I'm a big believer that if you are an engineer and if you are freaking out about customers, then you're not going to be working at the Forge, essentially. So that's not a place. This is not a place where you shy away from customers. We want people not to shy away from customers. I totally understand for maybe engineers or other people, it may be overwhelming that there are customers and then pinging. But having access to engineering is like super, super important. So I'll give you an example when it's super powerful. So let's say you have a customer and they don't want to consume your product through your own app, but they want to consume your product via API. And guess what? When you're building something via API, you're consuming via API, you typically have a lot of questions as an engineer. So the customer has the engineering team, they have a lot of questions. Hey, listen, how about we connect the engineer from your end and then the engineer from our end in Slack, because engineers are used to talk to each other in Slack internally anyway, right? So this is an example where it's a really good idea to put them in the Slack. Now, there are examples where it's a really bad idea also to put even your top 100 customers also into Slack, where maybe the customer is just maybe, I don't know, way too aggressive, or they're super, super demanding. And if you're going to put that customer into Slack and they're super demanding, that may destroy the attention, for example, that we need our engineers still to have on the core product and shipping a good product. So you have to choose which of the customers you want to have in Slack as well. But ultimately, it works really well. That's what a lot of also Bay Area companies do, right? But I still see a bunch of companies in Asia Pacific, Europe that don't do anything like that. Sure. And trying to go that extra mile and be super, super close to the customers, having literally them to be in your Slack environment.
Yeah. What do you think has changed the most in SaaS sales over the past few years, and maybe some outdated tactics that companies should finally stop using?
Outdated tech is one of the things that's naturally happening due to AI, especially. So we're going to see what I would describe the death of templates. So a lot of the communication in sales or just generally in the email ecosystem is very what's called static. So the same template is being sent across thousands, sometimes of individuals, right? There's no change apart from the first name. So everybody gets the same template, and you feel like, damn, this email probably was sent to other thousand individuals. When I look at an email like that, and due to actually user fatigue with looking at templates, you're like, let me click on the spam button and let's get rid of this. What we definitely going to, so we still see a lot of companies using templates. Majority still use templates in sales, and I think that has to die. And the reason why that will die for sure is because when you're sending a piece of static communication to your customers, it could be like a really good offer, right? So the customers, oh, really? I want to reply back to this, etc. Let's say in the world of email. But most of the emails, from what I'm seeing, and more emails actually, as a percentage of total emails, will be what I would say programmatic. That means every single potential buyer will receive an email that's computed just for them. So this is something that we do and a bunch of other folks do out in the space. But ultimately, we are seeing this sort of shift, just like in advertising, where ads become more and more personalized to you, especially in Facebook, knowing your gender, age, whatever, right? And then you can really tailor really well the ad copy. And that's exactly what we're going to see in the world of just generally sales, because of the ability to crawl the web and the ability to use LLMs, agentic, etc. We will see better email copies, so better, everything will be better. Now, the dilemma is that you will not be able to distinguish whether this was automated or actually written by a human, because LLMs and the outputs are getting so good. So also what we're going to see, because of potentially the influx of all the great emails that buyers are going to be getting, again, they're going to get fatigued to those emails as well, right? But what we will see, I think, on the buyers front, and I think I already know a few softwares that do that, is buyers will start to use also AI agents to ultimately scan for their inbox and scan for all these emails. And if it's a cold email, then the AI agent will maybe check versus the challenges that business has. And if that cold email potentially applies to the challenges of the organization, then it may float to the top for the buyer to look at it. So what I'm trying to say is that as sellers are building, or companies that build for sellers AI agents, also on the buyer front, there will be AI agents. And what will happen ultimately is an AI agent will talk to another AI agent, because the buyer AI agent will qualify the email. And so we're going to see more of that, I think, interaction in B2B, due to the fact that two B2B companies can't really effectively communicate. And there's always that friction. So I think the agentic capabilities will solve that friction. And I think I'm personally, excited about it because I get a lot of cold emails. Yeah, some of them land in spam, etc. But I would really love an AI agent to go through all my emails and say, okay, if this is a cold email, if this email comes from an unknown sender, please have a look at it. These are my priorities. And if it, if it does solve a real problem for me, I want to have a look at it. If not,
Yeah.
just send it to junk, etc. So I really would love that as well for myself. As naturally, when you become a CEO or a founder, you start getting a lot of emails. So I also feel the pain, and ultimately, this is where we headed, I think, as a society. But I don't see actually any other way, right? Slowly but surely, we're going to see more and more of these sort of automations or agentic capabilities coming into play in our daily lives.
Where can people learn more about you and about Salesforge online?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn, Frank Sondors from Salesforge. That's the place. If you're ever curious to check out what we do, just go to salesforge.ai. It's not Salesforce. I always say if you're getting Salesforce these days, you're getting Salesforge. And then and I think we're typically really good for companies that are typically of smaller size of up to sort of 100, 200 employees that are looking to aggressively scale. They don't want to hire people. That's what we're really good for. Not really good for cold calling, as an example. But yeah, that's what we do. And then happy to answer any questions on sales or scaling companies, etc. on LinkedIn to continue the conversation.
Excellent. We'll make sure to link all of that in the show notes. Frank, such a great conversation with a live human, not just Agent Frank, but everybody should check that out as well.
Not
So
this
thanks for
time,
being
no.
on SaaS Fuel.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Frank, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Frank and Salesforge at salesforge.ai. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. We've got full video episodes, we've got shorts, training, outtakes, lots more over there for you. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with anyone who still thinks a sticky note wall is a pipeline substitute. Yeah, everyone who shares this week gets a founder reality filter. It's a device that translates vague mission statements into actual strategy decks and eliminates all that we're defining the future nonsense. What if AI-driven marketing could unlock explosive growth for your business? Join us on Thursday as Peter Benet, principal consultant at Intercept Scale, reveals how AI-powered strategies are transforming mid-scale tech companies and how leaders can navigate remote teams successfully, no matter the location or time zone. Then next week on our founder episode, we'll sit down with Gerald Zenkel, CEO and co-founder of Kickscale, to discuss how AI is revolutionizing sales efficiency. With a track record of helping startups secure multi-million-dollar deals with brands like Red Bull, Bloomberg, and BBC, Gerald will share his expertise on scaling revenue and building high-performance sales teams. I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.